Hi, this video is about why your LLM strategy shouldn't be LLM centric. My name is David Hood and I'm CEO of 42 Robots AI, and we help organizations implement AI. I know this seems counterintuitive. It's like, but these are the new fancy tools. These are the new cool things that we want to use. Why wouldn't our strategy or solution or system be LLM centric? Well, I'm going to explain that in this video because the data and the information and the R&D that we have done, the clients that we've talked to, this is backed up significantly, despite the fact that pretty much all the information you see out there about using LLMs, AI, which is the major development in AI over the last couple of years, is going to be the opposite of this. And then at the end of this, I'll explain kind of the correct way to think about this. So first of all, what you're doing by thinking about essentially that putting the LLM at the center of your problem or that you're trying to solve, you're cutting off at least 99% of possible solutions. And I know this sounds bold, but it's very real. And so a lot of people companies that I talk to, oftentimes it's like, oh, we have AI, we're using AI, we have Microsoft Copilot, which is basically a chatbot. And on the one hand, I understand there's a lot of lack of understanding of what can be done with these LLMs, but on the other hand, it's a little bit of a facepalm moment because it is barely scratching the surface of what's possible. It's extremely wasteful to just use a chatbot in a lot of scenarios. Now, don't get me wrong, it's going from zero to Copilot for a lot of people actually does help them do stuff faster. There are uses for these copilots. So I'm not saying it's like, oh, they stink in all the ways. It's that there's a lot more that can be done that's being left on the table. And so it's much more wasteful. I mean, I've talked to some people at some of these big organizations that have done Copilot, and sometimes the feedback I get is, it just really doesn't save any time. Like for them personally, they've tried it out and they're like, meh, a big meh. And so, and I think part of that has to do with essentially like the bad AI architecture, which is essentially what I'm alluding to here by it being LLM centric. So I recommend you watch that video. We talk about some similar concepts, but from different angles. I dig deeper into certain stuff. Also, a lot of these solutions are thought of as being extremely separate and external from your organization versus taking some responsibility for it, bringing it inside the organization and building solutions for you and your organization. What I've discovered when talking to many businesses is that they all, even two businesses in basically the same category or that are direct competitors, often have very different problems that they need to solve. And so that means that you can't just have a Microsoft Copilot that just generally solves all problems. That's not a feasible way to go about doing it. You're going to have massive inefficiencies, and sometimes it's just not going to work or it's not going to be worth it. And then another angle here that is common, that leaves a lot on the table, is thinking about the solution is the model versus thinking about the solution as a system that you build to solve specific problems. You can see this so many times. You can see this is still very pervasive. They talk about the model as the solution and the solution as the model. It's talked about interchangeably by just about everybody. And this reveals this bad strategy. If somebody is talking about it like that in most scenarios, that means that they're using the wrong strategy. Part of this is just because LLMs have serious limitations. That you're trying to put a square peg in a round hole a lot of times if you're trying to just solve it with the LLM at the center. And really it's like one of those things where just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. A lot of times it is possible to do a solution with just an LLM at the center, but it costs 1,000 times more. And let me give you an example. There's a specific feature set that we built for our AI agents about 6 months ago, called long-term memory. And it's more complicated than that, than it seems on the surface. There's some layers to the memory. There's a key kind of like metadata and compression that we're doing in different ways in terms of how we store it and then how we retrieve it. But long story short, this is something that a lot of large language model companies are struggling to implement into LLMs. Meanwhile, we did it with one coder in less than a week. By making it external to the LLM. And I expect that the LLM companies, just due to the nature of how LLMs work and their limitations, they're going to have to spend way more money, and it's going to take them way longer. So just because you can, which it's even questionable if they can, put long-term memory inside LLMs, doesn't mean you should. It's like, let's envision LLMs as these brand new engines. Engines didn't exist, and now we've got engines, and we want to drive cars with it. Well, do you build the steering wheels, the brakes, the back seat all into the engine? Or should those be external parts that are accessed through a greater system? Obviously, the latter. And I think the same thing is true here. Actually, I think it's even more true for LLMs. They are incredibly useful, amazing tools that do awesome things, are capable of awesome things, but they are not capable of everything. And not everything should be put inside them or integrated too deeply inside them. They can be pulled out. And as a result, you can get better solutions faster, far faster, orders of magnitude faster. We're talking a week versus years. And I bet that OpenAI is spending way more money than one developer on it, and it's going to take them a long time if they can even solve it at all. So I think part of this is also a lot of people are just basically seeing what they want to see. They don't see the limitations of the LLMs. They don't really try to understand what it is that they can do, what it is that how they work at a fundamental level. And so they're kind of hand waving a lot. And as a result, they're thinking, okay, we've got AI now when we got Copilot, basically. Nope, you don't. Maybe you can tell people you don't. But so another part of what ends up happening, actually, let's do whack-a-mole. Let's put this in here. So what ends up happening when you put the LLM at the center is you have to put pretty much as much as the solution as possible into the LLM. And this has a huge effect on its reliability. When you do it the right way, you actually pull as much of the solution out of the LLM. So that enables you to increase the reliability. And I'll explain how that works in a minute. Also, by pulling stuff out of the LLM, you are able to handle complexity much better. When you are doing maximum inside the LLMs, what you end up doing is you get into this. The closer you get to your solution, you'll start noticing that you play whack-a-mole with things. Let me give you an example. So, let's say you're tuning the process, and you got the LLM, and it's doing A, B, and C really well. Now you're trying to get it to do D. And as you try to get to do D, you start to realize that reduces the effectiveness of A. And then you go to start to do E, and you realize that reduces A even further, and it hurts your ability to do B. This is what will start happening. The more comprehensive, the more challenging and unique solution that you try to solve, you'll get into whack-a-mole situations. It's just kind of inevitable. You cannot ride two bicycles at once. Well, you can, but it's extremely challenging and not recommended. You're also going to increase your costs. So you need smarter and smarter models to handle this, while when you do it the way that I'm going to suggest, you can dramatically lower your cost. And I'll explain that in a second. I also think you can develop these solutions much faster. While from a high-level architecture standpoint, the LLM at the center seems kind of neat and cool and elegant, you run into these problems, and as a result, your ability to actually solve the problems takes way more time. Just like I mentioned with the long-term memory, again, one developer, less than a week, and then there's a whole industry of model providers that are trying to integrate it into their models. So who knows how much time, energy, and money has gone into that for quite some time to get that inside the LLM. So think about the major difference between that. It's a little bit counterintuitive, because it's like the way I'm going to suggest it sounds a little bit more complex at first, but actually what you're doing is it's much more practical. Again, I'll explain in a second. Okay, so another common idea here is an LLM on a loop, basically. This is a fallacy that I've heard from major people, and I see this in how people draw their diagrams of how to build LLM solutions. It's basically like an LLM is doing a few things and it's just looping. All right, and that is a recipe for disaster. And this is part of the reason why people are struggling to build AI agents effectively, because that is not, again, you're going to leave a lot of opportunity on the table, and it's very impractical, and it kind of, when you do that, there's kind of an inevitability of degrading. It degrades, the effectiveness of the system degrades very, very quickly when you do that. And it does put LLMs at the center. I also think that this is happening, it's just shiny. The LLMs are shiny, all the nerds are excited about it, and so kind of classic coding, classic software has become, almost like not cool among nerds. And so and everybody's being drawn to this, and it's really cool, and so as a result, they're throwing out old things that work really well. And that's again, not very practical. So I'll give you an example. I was listening to a podcast where a PhD in computer science said, basically he started to kind of talk about solving complex problems like long-term memory and other things. And he started to move away conceptually, like talk about taking LLMs out of the center. And he was like, no, but that's not interesting. That's not fun. Well, good for you. Maybe as a professor or a student, what's interesting and fun is relevant to you, but to me, when I'm trying to solve real-world problems for organizations and humans, while I want to have fun, that's not really the purpose here. The purpose is to actually solve problems, and doing it, putting the LLM at the center, dramatically makes it much, much harder for you to solve problems. Nerds are seeing what they want to see. There's also a bunch of vested interest in making these shiny objects, like ChatGPT. OpenAI wants to keep saying, hey, our model's over here, look at us, look at us, look at us, look at us. And Google, their stock prices, I'm sure, are tied to how effective and how their promotions go, stuff like that. Also, we're just very early in the game, and so it's understandable that a lot of people are distracted by the shiny things of these cool new magic boxes. All right, so I'll mention here real quick the correct way. Basically, build software. And I mean that in a very direct way. Don't throw out, let's call it classic coding. You start with classic coding. And that is the framework, that is the structure with which you will build these AI solutions. And you use LLMs as tools. The classic code uses them versus the LLMs using classic code as tools, which is how, when you put the LLM at the center, that's what happens. And then also, as a result, you pick apart the problem. And this enables you to solve, sometimes it's useful to solve, like with an LLM, kind of solve multiple things at once. But in general, that's the exception and not the rule. And what you want to do is you want to pick key things. So if you can solve something with classic software, do it. Solve it with classic software. That's better, it's more reliable, it's faster, it's less expensive. Let's do it. But at the key places where, okay, we definitely need an LLM to do this, then you have it solve just that and that only. And what this does is it pulls as much of the solution out of the LLM. It's much easier and faster to make it reliable. You can also often run these on much lighter weight models, which means they can be faster and less expensive. So this is critical. So, and that's just a really high level version of it. If you want to see a little bit more detail, there's quite a few other videos in this same playlist, the bad AI solution architecture and several others where I go in a little bit more deeper about the correct way to build this. Anyway, if you would like help implementing AI within your organization, please give us a call or click the link below and we'll go from there. If you like this video, like it. If you disagree with some of these things, please put a comment in here. I'd love to hear from you. I don't think that I understand all the angles that are possible here, but this does seem like something based upon lots of R&D that is valid. Anyway, thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.